Well, I almost started by making a thumbnail of myself doing this, which is kind of what you might think of as the old man Jim Morrison, right? I mean, stare at yourself in the mirror long enough and you can get pictures like that too. Well, I think I will begin with what you might call well, I had a funny name for it, but it's not couth. So let's just say I'll complain about something and you guys go click, click, and share. So here's what I'm going to complain about. Something completely important to the state of the world today. Online recipes. Much as they have helped me out any number of times, which is true, if we're talking about actual food. But if you're talking about something that's leisurely, um, a cocktail, perhaps, a dessert, anything of that kind, then brace yourself for the most aggravating nonsense, both content and structure, imaginable. First of all, what you get is some sort of, I don't know, calendar oriented enthusiasm about when this particular thing should be made and consumed, and yet invariably they always end with the line, but you can enjoy it all year round. In which case, why'd you tell me about that in the first place? Anyway, but that's just the start. Then what you get is a whole bunch of third-rate haiku about the sensations of the thing and the relationships that it's associated with, how you can curl up in, your loved one's arms to enjoy this, or the delighted, response of the other people who will consume this thing because you made it. And so but it's all, as I say, in this kind of perfervid prose about, the smells and the textures and the whatevers. So, of course, by now you have clicked through this or that photo of the thing, not to mention all of the little other things like, this whole recipe site keeps obtruding its various little, click on me's at you. And then that thing comes up at the bottom with a little teeny tiny hidden X in the corner, that little bar that comes up, looks like it's from 1999. That's always popping up everywhere. Well, that's there too. So, you're scrolling here, and if you're on your phone, God help you, because you're trying to scroll and you're going to punch every one of these fucking things by accident. But so anyway, you're working your way through this, and of course, you come to a section where it's big and off the screen, so you got to do this, and all on and on. So you go ahead, and you can't find the place where there's anything resembling amounts, nothing that looks like a recipe. It's still talking about how great it is and how great you're going to be. And it starts talking about as if you had made it. Or to say, well, put the ingredients together and then, it'll be toasted up for a lovely, and you're like, wait, toast it up? What? Is there no science in the world? Is there nothing here in a recipe that resembles a lab bench with milliliters, with a Bunsen burner, and with the proper tools for the job laid out, and the amounts weighed and measured and set out in order? I'm given to understand that cooks make a lot of noise about this, and they have French words for this. Well, we know who invented that. Thank you very much. The scientists know exactly how this works, and this recipe is not it. It's not a recipe. It has caused me to scroll down for multiple screens. I'm beginning to think that some sort of metric is being taken here. So finally you give up and you go back to the search engine, and there's another one, and you go, oh, okay, good. This is what? Recipes.com. That's fantastic. Okay, that's got to have it. So you click on it, and there's the name of the thing, right? And it's going straight to the page. You go, and the first thing that you have to do is certify that you're 21 or over by clicking on this thing and entering your email, and then you're going to get the email, then click on that link, and then come back around the mulberry bush and eventually figure out, how to make your whatever it is, your white Russian or something. And you're like, Okay, I'm finally beginning to understand what the dark web is. Okay, because as I understand it, the dark web is the place where there are things on the internet that are not like all notified and certified and hooked together and, all completely part of your experience of your identity on the screen, on your platform, and all your notifications come flapping in at you. So the dark web is when you have to go off and go places and know where you're going and like have to type in URLs and stuff like that. In other words, the internet. And I finally figured out what's meant by the dark web. It's anything that's not this. All right. So you go to another one. And what happens here? You're working your way down and you suddenly discover that you have to sign in. You can read about them, but you can't actually look at the recipes until you register and log in. At this point, my eyes are just crossing. And of course, you've hit the cookies, right? Every single one of these sites, you go there saying, well, sure. I mean, you're going to give me the recipe I want. Might as well give you the cookie. I mean, it's not hurting me. And besides, I'm a primate. And when it says accept or do not accept, I mean, you're going, well, come on, I mean, we're not going to reject people, right? I mean, that's mean. I mean, if it had a button that says, we won't know who you are, and a button that says we can mine you for whatever we want, I mean, then I would click on the first one. But no, it's I do not accept. I'm not going to click on that. Who do you think I am? Accept. Yeah, we're all citizens here together in the global, not dark web. That's what it is. So here I am, so I've happily, cookied my way through every one of these sites. And finally, I mean, who knows what it takes? You may or may not have the stomach to get through this to actually find the thing that you're looking up. No, then you go to the boxes where your old cocktail books are, and then you thumb through it, and then you find the one, and the parts where the pages aren't stuck together with Kahlua, you actually can find where, the thing is that you wanted to make. And you kind of wonder why you didn't start there. This is what comes of watching The Big Lebowski again. And one wants his White Russian at that time. And they're easy. And I was pretty sure I knew easily how to make it off the top of my head. And of course I was right. Finally, after all this, I look it up. And sure enough, I'm like, yep, that's the way to make it. Okay. So anyway, what about anything more serious? I'd like you to contemplate a notion. And you may say, well, this is one of those, fortune cookie political insights that old people like to fling about. Everybody knows that. Except when they don't. And the thing is that when you have a regime change, a transfer of power, a new breath of fresh air, however you want to think of this, that the security services of the political entity in question typically coast right on through it with nary a change. The most extreme is a name change and perhaps a different, placard or a different ideological paragraph placed at the front of their manual. But the people involved, maybe the head of the security, service takes a retirement and, a new fellow comes along, is in charge, perhaps. But the institution proceeds remarkably as before. Now, if we're talking about somewhere that's supposed to have the same government, we don't call it regime change. We call it, I don't know what, sort of a musical chairs event. And we think of that as a shift in, something about the government, as long as nothing really changes. Well, in those cases, the institutions really don't change very much at all. And this very same people just truck along in them. Perhaps there's a political show of trading out the chief again, as I say, but most often, strangely, not. But let's not go to those fairly easy situations. We say, well, that's not really a regime change, Ron. I mean, Well, we can go to a very dramatic example in 1979 in Iran. I believe pretty much anywhere people would refer to this as a regime change. And strangely enough, the Shah's security services continued into the next decade, maintaining a number of critical alliances with, interestingly enough, the same countries with whom they had been thick before, with only, a name shift and this or that, small change around here and there. But the deals that were being cut beforehand and the deals that were being cut after them were just continuations thereof. And the reality that such services are policy-making bodies on their own in many cases, or slightly more complicated, they are a piece of a set of policy-making alliances that are not particularly official. Is the case, and that persists. So you can see it as well. I mean, there's another not quite representative example would be the dissolution of the Soviet Union, because the institution within Russia, although it basically shrinks in terms of its borders and also shifts up its name a little bit and stuff, is continues pretty much in exactly the same institutional form as it did before, which again in that case isn't really quite too easy to criticize, because Russia was Russia. It's not like that changed. But anyways, one could, however, point to many of the former Soviet republics in which before what you had was a local branch or local version, somewhat decentralized, semi-autonomous form of the KGB, which is how we say it here, the KGB, and now has its own name with its own little country, no longer a Soviet Socialist Republic, and it basically it's the same people and the same institution and the same office structure and the same alliances and the same everything, trucking along as before, unless it makes an interesting, cuts a deal with some friendly agency that it hadn't been friendly with before. Although then in those cases, you're looking at Georgia or something, you're saying, oh, but it's security services, they're in good with the CIA, right? That's a big change. And you're kind of like, actually, you should have looked at that before 1991. You might have been kind of surprised. Okay, so anyway, all this sort of thing is fine if we're talking about countries we don't like or systems that we don't like and say, oh yeah, those bastards. Yeah, look at that. It's terrible. Well, let's bear in mind a couple of things. When it comes to security services, secondarily military effort, because that can, to a somewhat lesser degree, but still way up there, dialing it back is not something that an incoming administration, whether, as we say, a peaceful transfer of power or even a revolutionary regime, it's not something they really find easy to do. And I think there are many, many good reasons to understand why. Good in the sense of understandable, not good anything to do with anything desirable. But the idea that those things are easy to click up, but the volume down, the down volume is stuck. It's extremely difficult in a variety of ways for any such group, however much they pitch themselves as completely different from the last guy, to click that down. We have institutional reasons. We have, public acceptance reasons. We have many others. Well, let us look at for example, invasions of Iraq and Afghanistan. And through several of these alleged transfers of power, we look and we see a lot of blither about, drawdowns or surges or any number of these things. And really, every single time, what we really see is that troops get shuffled around and not a whole lot changes. I mean, oh yeah, drew down the troops. What, we went from 180,000 to 140,000. It's still 140,000 troops, okay? So you're looking through all these things and you're kind of going, all right, there's really not much of a change. And what about other security things and so on? Ah, yes, the Patriot Act, right? Well, you would think after those bad old fellows left office in 2008 that the dreadfulness of that act, which was widely acknowledged as being basically this huge kludge that went through in 15 minutes because nobody could be bothered to look and were afraid to be seen objecting to it. And gets passed without, within, like I say, in 15 minutes or so, that people even looking at it. Well, you would think that what then is the political cost to be made, to be paid for simply saying today, this thing blows and it hasn't gone well. And it's pretty clear that, this, that, and the other aspect of it is just garbage. So let's just cancel it. We can do that. Hands up. And it's gone. Patriot Act. Boof. That can happen legally in terms of raw effort, time, etc. It's between coffee breaks. But that hasn't happened, or any provision of it actually dialed down. Border security, so-called. Those of you who think that everything bad in the United States began in late 2016 might be a little bit surprised that the services in charge of U.S. border control are not noted for their humanitarianism, or indeed any observance of anything resembling a law at all. Well, fine. That has not changed through multiple administrations. If anything, it's only ramped up. And so then we get this fascinating notion of ICE, which, if you draw a big organization chart, is sitting, it's just like Homeland Security. It's sitting over there like a big wart, not attached to anything. And so, the FBI, at least, is within the Department of Justice after being dragged there screaming and kicking decades ago, but it eventually landed in the Department of Justice, that is to say, subject to some kind of administration, whereas ICE is not. So, looking at it, just structurally, a 5-year-old could look at that chart and say, what's that thing doing there? Is it doing anything that the other parts aren't doing? And the answer is, well, technically, no, it's not. Well, screw that. Get that out of there. Could be quite easy. And various policies of interest could be examined. And sure enough, what has changed? Nothing. Well, there's promises to be made and promises to change and faith that there will be this change. And of course, they're going to get around to it. They're busy right now and so forth. And then you say, well, wait, what about the last time we had a thing like that? Wasn't there some bay, some place at a bay? I don't know. Margaritaville, Guantanamera, some place, some name like that, right? Well, anyway, there was these people. I don't know. It was really disgusting, or we felt bad about it for some reason. And well, oh yeah, that's right. That president in 2008, the first day, what a hero! He signed a paper that was going to close it. Okay, that must have happened. That's awesome. Still there, with dozens of prisoners against whom the charges have been dropped. And that means they go home tomorrow, right? Click, clack, cell door swings open. Guy looks up. The guard says, all right, get out of here. They made your bail. Or the detective or the warden or whoever says, charges are dropped. Get out of here. And then we cut to the outside of the prison and the guy's standing there. And then you have the scene where a car drives up, whether it's someone they know, someone they don't know, a taxi, not a taxi or whatever. But, we all know the trope. I mean, the warden says charges have been dropped and then scene cut and you're standing outside the jail and the car drives up. Yeah, that hasn't happened. So there is, I would say, some euphoria remaining since last November. I don't see anything of the kind. And I mean nothing. Zip. Policy wise, that dials that knob back in a wide variety of topics, even a little. So prove me wrong, which only means that you'll be keeping your eye on that knob as you should.